Okay, Ryan Scollan, co-founder and CEO of GScience. Welcome to the Live on Form podcast.
Thanks very much, Dave. Great to be here.
So Ryan, helping gamers master their health and performance. That's what you guys do. Tell me a bit about that.
So I suppose the best place to start is how much do you know about gamers and esports?
Yeah, so I'm 45, Ryan. So if you imagine I know very little about gaming esports. So I've got a 6-year-old son who likes to watch gamers shout a lot on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a perception of most parents. They have absolutely no idea what their kids are doing or what this digital world's all about.
Thank you for that, mate. I
yeah.
appreciate it.
Well, hopefully today I can shed a wee bit of light on esports and gaming.
Please.
So I suppose the first place to start is you're probably familiar with video games, right? You've probably heard Fortnite being thrown around the media. You know, you've probably heard last year there was a 16-year-old kid who won $1.6 million, and everyone kind of realized, oh, what is this thing, esports? And my son who's playing video games here, maybe I might actually let him play an extra 3 hours if he's going to walk away 1.6 million.
Let's maybe give him a little bit more attention than we were previously, and maybe just give him a little bit more coaching. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So esports itself is the competitive form of video games. Okay. And for some people who have no idea about the gaming industry, you've probably heard of the mainstream games, as I said, like the Fortnites, the Call of Duties, the FIFA. But even within that itself, there's more of a deeper kind of subculture of gaming where you've got your really hardcore games like League of Legends, CSGO, Dota 2. They're the real old school games that have been around for many years. And that's where the biggest competitive audience really lies, is in the likes of League of Legends, which is a MOBA. And there's different genres of games as well. So you've got your FPSs, you've got your MOBAs, you've got the likes of FIFA. And basically the way I like to talk about it is the esports are very much just like your traditional sports, the way you've got your rugby, your footballs, your hockeys, all that there. And within each of these games, you have really core individuals who are mad about one game or mad about another. Okay. So that's just a bit of narrative. So it's very much like traditional sports, but instead of having sports, you've got video games, and esports is the competitive form of that. And just to kind of give you a bit more of an idea about the industry itself. So, I mean, right now, esports, the revenues are around about $1.3 billion, which is actually quite a small number. The interesting thing, however, is the gaming industry, which is worth $159 billion in revenue. Wow. And that's growing rapidly. Both industries are actually growing rapidly. And I think what some of the misconceptions for people who don't really work in the industry and know about it is that they think esports is the huge one, but it's really the recreational gaming market where the big money's at. And a lot of, the big kind of IP providers and publishers use esports as a way to market their kind of games to be able to acquire, the end game or the gamers in that recreational gaming market. So that's just a wee bit about the industry. That's a bit about esports, but I'll tell you a wee bit about what we actually do and why I'm here today kind of chatting about this.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I know very little about gaming, but I guess the notion of being able to compete in something that demands complete mental focus and kind of cognition and wellness and concentration for such a extended period of time fascinates me, and I think it's a real skill, and it's one that is probably underappreciated but probably widely misunderstood. So I think that's why it's cool to hear from you guys today.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think we'll touch upon that in a couple of moments. But so just a bit of background on GScience. So GScience is an esports performance and health company. And what we do is we use sports science and data analytics to help esports athletes improve their health and also in-game performance. So just a bit about me. My background is a sports scientist. So I graduated from Loughborough University and went on then to found GScience. So I kind of had that moment, Jay, when you graduate from uni and you're like, okay, what the heck am I going to do with my life? And I moved back home to regroup. And the long story short of it is that I moved back home with my partner into my family home, which you can imagine in itself is a bit chaotic and something I would not recommend doing, but you got to do what you got to do. But whilst I was there, my dad was like, look, Ryan, you're not sitting around here coming up with the business idea, like get out there and get to work. So I was running boot camps with one of my friends in the early hours of the morning. And then I would go and work in Black Box Fitness. I had an internship there. And then at nighttime, I'd come back and kind of plan out GScience. And how I actually came up with the idea was that I have a whiteboard on my wall in the apartment now. One day it will be famous, I think. And I drew up 3 circles. So the first circle was, what am I actually good at? So I reckon I wasn't half bad at, sports science. I picked up a few tips and tricks whilst at Loughborough. The second thing was, what I actually want to do.
Yep.
And for me, like my whole life, Jay, to be honest, like I've always been mad about sport or mad about performance and competition. And, I've got a younger brother and sister as well. So I've done a lot of sports coaching. I worked down at Camp America. I really enjoyed them experiences. And I just really enjoy working with people in general and helping others, get the most out of themselves and help them realize their own potential. So I wanted to have that core component there. The third circle was the one that killed me, to be honest. It was there for about 6 weeks on the whiteboard, which was, what industry can I apply this to, or who's going to pay me to do it? And honestly, for so long, I'd go round and round and keep rubbing it out. And okay, I'm going to do wearable tech. Okay, rub that out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to rub that out. And I shit you not, it was after a game of Call of Duty. I came back down and I looked at it and I was like, it's esports, it's gaming. And then I went up to told Molly, my partner, I was like, Molly, I found it, I figured it out, it's gaming.
The eureka moment.
The eureka moment. If only it was that easy, Jay. If only that was easy.
Yeah, it
and then that's the end of the story. $1 million company.
There you go.
But no. So I basically came up with that, and then really after that, I was like, look, I know nothing about this really. Like I have some knowledge of it. After doing my initial kind of preliminary research, I realized that there was seriously a health crisis in gaming. But I needed to really get my hands dirty and build out my network. So we really did start from the ground up. And I think just to kind of give you a summary over the last 2 years, what we've really been up to. So after I decided, look, there's a problem here and I think there's an opportunity to build a business, I put together a business plan and I applied to an accelerator called Ignite NI. So Ignite NI is a early stage technology accelerator for entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And basically it just takes you through a 6-month program for idiots like me and tries to teach you a thing or two about business to get you going. So they kind of helped me create the foundations of GScience really, and I owe a lot of my success today to them. And after that, then throughout that process, we were really just trying to figure out what we were doing. To be honest, like we knew there was a problem there, but we needed to figure out, okay, how do we actually solve it?
So what's the you talk about the health crisis in gaming? What's that?
Yeah, so I mean. Well, this is how we came about it. So the health crisis itself, how I would describe it is, I just mentioned all them amazing things about gaming. It's the fastest growing sports industry in the world. People are playing up for $35 million in some of these tournaments, right? But there is a darker side to it, which not many people understand. And the health crisis really is, well, we'll look at the pro level for a start. These athletes are training for 8 to 12 hours every single day. And I don't know any other sport in the world that you'd have someone doing that. And we'll go on to talk about is esports sports or esports athletes, but that's for later. But they're playing for 8 to 12 hours every single day. And the biggest kind of issue for them is that you're taking these kids a lot of the time who are usually like 16 years old, right? And you're throwing them into an environment where they're going from playing in their bedrooms one year to playing on a main stage in front of millions of people online for or hundreds of millions of prize money, right? It's no surprise that so many of these individuals end up burning out or have mental health issues or essentially just crash. And it's simply because you're taking individuals who don't have the coping mechanisms to be able to deal with the demands of playing in a high performance environment that not many people perceive gaming as. So not only is it the training, but then you actually look at the demands of playing esports. So there was a study done by German university that looked at esports athletes in competition, right? And they measured their cortisol levels. So esports athletes actually had similar cortisol levels to that of a Formula One driver.
And that's purely because cortisol, as we know, is released by stress. That's your body's response to stress. So they're creating as much stress in their body as a Formula One driver. So all the inflammation, all the bad stuff that causes lowered immunity and fatigue and burnout. Okay, that is really interesting, given that it's Formula One, right? You're getting bashed around. You've got to massively focus and concentrate, but then you're doing gaming.
Yeah, but that's the thing, and I think Formula One's actually a really nice sport to draw parallels from, because I believe, Formula One drivers are cognitive athletes as well. They're
Agreed.
ripping around the track at 200 miles per hour. They're taking in loads of different visual stimuli. They're listening to their team on their comms about making micro changes to the car.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible amount of kind of executive cognitive function that you need to be able to perform at that level. But yeah, kind of looking at that. So, I mean, that was one of the crazy stats that first got me super interested. And then also understanding that their heart rate as well is going from, 160 beats to 180 beats for these 8 to 12 hours a day, which as well. Like, that's an incredible amount of stress on your body physiologically. And so understanding them too, right? And then actually looking at the mechanical performance and the pressure that are under there, okay? So the average esports athlete is doing roughly between 400 and 500 actions per minute on a keyboard and mouse, right? Just to put that into perspective, the average person does about 80 to 100, right? So you think about that external load, you think about the internal load, and you think about the total duration in which they're playing at. It starts to really paint a picture of the serious stress and demands physically, psychologically, emotionally that esports athletes are under. And the reason why I say it's a health crisis is that, unlike traditional sports where you have a full team of psychologists, physios, infrastructure, analytics tools, athlete, monitoring systems, esports are really only starting to wise up to that now. And that's why, for example, you've seen the likes. I'll give you one example here. So there was a player called Uzi who was 23 years old, Jay, right? 23 years old, League of Legends player. He had to retire because he developed type 2 diabetes, and he had a chronic overuse injury in his shoulder. And that was all down to poor load management. And then most recently as well, Zuma, who's one of the veterans in Call of Duty, he had to retire because of an overuse injury of his wrist. And what I'm trying to say is, like, a lot of these problems can be solved, but it's just a lack of education, a lack of support.
It's also something that is massively key and in focus now, right? Because if you're, gaming is going nowhere. Sitting down looking at a screen is going nowhere.
The future.
And I mean, my boy's 6 and he's starting to do it now. I didn't do it as a kid. That's not that much of a generational difference between that being pretty alien to me to now being just common everyday practice. So it's something that needs to be really focused on, especially from a health point of view, in terms of sort of composition, body composition, and those kind of illnesses, which type 2 diabetes has obviously been brought on by poor diet and lack of mobility. And then you've got your stress and your cortisol, which is purely mental, all that mental stress, taking in all that detail and imagery at all the same time and just not being able to cope.
It's insane. It really is. But I think, once again, I'll kind of bring this back, Jay, to you now. When I say esports athlete, what do you think of?
I think esports athlete, I think of probably an 18 to 20-year-old guy. That's it. I don't have an image. I don't have it because I know there's the whole team element, which I know you're going to talk about. I don't understand the team process, but I think of a pretty smart person, because I think you've got to be smart. So I think of a pretty smart person, but I don't think of somebody massively unhealthy, because I think, my perception is kind of the same things that drive you to be really mentally sharp and want to have a really good cognitive function are almost the same things that drive you to want to stay in reasonable physical shape, and the two go together, but I'm obviously wrong.
Well, no, I think, look, yourself, when you're talking about populations of people, it's very easy to have a stereotype. And the reason why I asked you that, a lot of people have a negative stereotype of what gamers are.
I think if you asked a lot of people, they'd say they were, they were overweight teenagers sat there smoking weed.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, even the audience is probably going to listen to this podcast who are probably not familiar with esports, would not have had a clue about some of the stuff we just talked about there previously. No. And I hope that's maybe opened up their eyes to the demands of, being an esports athlete. Now, before we kind of talk about the recreational problems and all that there, I just want to touch upon a few other points. So the really interesting thing is, esports itself, as I said, is the fastest growing sports industry, right? The prize pool is starting to become ridiculous for some of these tournaments, like $35 million last year for the Dota 2 Intel Masters, right? The difference between first and second place was between I think $11 million, right?
Wow.
Like, imagine the pressure on a kid or a young adult who's literally, as I say, come from their bedroom, going onto the main stage, competing for that kind of money.
What's the age? So is there a minimum age for this competition?
I think it's 16. No, I'm not 100% sure now. I need to double check that, but I think it is 16.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can talk about this as long as you want and debate it, whatever your, sort of ideology is around, the progression of cognition. But 16-year-old is not fully cognitively developed, right?
No.
Not able to cope with everything that throws at them.
I think to be fair, a lot of the players would be slightly more mature. Like some of the games like Fortnite, you get a lot more younger players, but some of the games like CS:GO, it's more mature individuals. So it really does depend on that the esport as well. But you're totally right. I mean, you're still, yourself, like you're still maturing as you continue to grow through that 16, 18, kind of 21 age range. But yeah, I think that what I was bringing my point back around to was what's super interesting for me is there's been a debate for a long time around, are esports athletes, right? And I've just listed whole reasons why I think they are. But the one thing I think is super important to understand is there's traditional sports athletes that we're all familiar with from our background, traditional sports, right? And then I believe there's a new generation of cognitive performers and cognitive athletes. And my argument is that esports isn't a sport because I don't think they should be put side by side. And I understand the definition of sport is physical exertion. There has to be a thing of, some sort of physical exertion in a skilled movement, which I still do believe that esports meets, because if you've ever been on a keyboard mouse and playing CS:GO or you're playing League of Legends, like you need to be, physically in shape in a sense to be able to, control their movements. Your motor control needs to be there, and then there's all the cognitive processing, executive function, reaction time, all of them metrics and all of them skills need to be in place for you to be an effective performer, right? But I still don't think that we should compare esports athletes with traditional sports athletes, because it's like apples and pears. It's two completely different performance requirements for two completely different sports. So I know there's so many traditional sports people that turn their nose up at esports, and I know there's so many esports people that turn their nose up at traditional sports.
I'm sure they do, yeah.
But I think it should be like left alone, in the sense that, look, we respect traditional sports and their amazing physical capabilities and mental capabilities there, but also I think esports athletes deserve the respect of what it actually takes to be at that level. And just to give you one other quick example, so when we were out working with Gamers Origin in France, Kate O'Keefe, Dr. Kate O'Keefe, shall I say now, our performance psychologist, was running some cognitive tests. And one of the big issues when you're doing cognitive tests for this population is that if they're not individualized, all of the gamers will get 100% of the scores, because the cognitive tests are used for general population, right? But some of the scores these guys were getting were just completely off the charts, and it goes back down again to show just how much more advanced a professional esports athlete is than your everyday, human being. And I think it's amazing, just both for research, both for performance. Like esports itself is such an incredibly exciting place to work in right now.
I think that is fascinating, but I guess the fascinating thing is that additional cognitive development has massive crossover into everyday life as well. So these guys and girls with those types of scores, you can guarantee they're going to be pretty sharp in everyday life. If they want to do something else, if they want to start a business, if they want to be entrepreneurial, if they want to take, high level, executive function roles, then they're pretty much predisposed to do that because their gaming has been their education.
Yeah. And I think, gaming does get a lot of stick, but there's a lot you can learn from gaming. Yes, we talk about the cognitive skills as well, but even for young people, like the leadership skills, the communication skills, there's so many benefits to gaming. I think in all, it's all about balance though, and it's about having a healthy relationship with the game. Unfortunately as well, though, Jay, with the way games are designed, it's designed to hit into that dopamine system. It's designed to keep you coming back. It's designed to keep you hooked in to the game. And I think that is a massive issue. And that's why, gaming addiction is a problem. That's why so many people use gaming as their kind of outlet for stress and escapism out of the real world, especially now during lockdown. I know a lot of people have turned to video games to kind of keep them sane. But I think one of the things we're really trying to do with the gaming population is really help them become more self-aware and start to really understand, look, games are designed a certain way to keep you hooked in, but if you're constantly hooked in there and not recovering properly and using that as your kind of fix for all the emotional problems that you actually have, it's not a healthy cycle to be in. So that's one of the kind of key things that we actually work through with both, proper professional sports athletes or esports athletes, and also the more recreational gaming is really helping them understand, how games are built, what their relationship with gaming, and how to maintain more of a healthy, sustainable relationship with it.
Yes, I guess into that, tell me a little bit about what GScience are doing. So I know you work with teams, but I assume in your, you're building, you're building work to be able to work with individuals too. So just tell me a little bit about, we know why you started, we know your background, and it's all in sports science, which is massively interesting and a great way for you to go in and be a leader in this area. So what is it GScience are actually doing?
Yeah, so I suppose I'll kind of go back a few steps again in terms of what or how I kind of started. Like when I first set it up, I rang up my good friend Jamie, who's a fellow sports scientist from Loughborough. And I told Jamie that, look, I'm going to be building this company that's trying to help gamers improve their health and wellness. He told me I was mad, right? Now he's the co-founder of GScience.
That's your amazing salesman skills, Ryan. You're amazing.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, look, going back 2 years ago, Jay, trust me, the esports scene looked very, very different to what it is now. Now it's very easy to understand why they need it, but at that stage, people are a bit like, and even when I pitched this in Northern Ireland, people looked at me as if I had two heads. They're like, esports, what? You're doing what? But anyway, what we actually did and what we've been doing is, Jamie and I got our hands dirty. We went out there and we started working with teams, and very quickly what we were able to do was to build championship winning teams. So we took some of these semi-pro teams, went in, fixed a lot of the basic communication skills, a lot of their habits, and just kind of their mindset, and we were able to have like a pretty significant performance change on the team dynamic and the team performance, which meant that we were able to get some early success in our coaching career, but also give us a really good opportunity to start to better understand gamers' pain points and behaviors. So we were able to not only understand our end user, but we were able to collect data, and we were able to refine our coaching methodology. So we did this a few times, over the last 18 months, and we went on to do it 2 more times with another semi-professional team, and then with Gamers Origin. And then that's when we kind of realized, okay, there's actually something here, and there's something here that's scalable. And then, given Jamie's background in athlete monitoring and load monitoring from the traditional sports world, and us understanding the best protocols and practices from traditional sports, we realized that, there's an opportunity here to build an athlete monitoring system for esports athletes. So what we're really working on at the minute is a product called Optimal. And Optimal combines players' health data, which is looking at, self-report data, so some of the psychological stuff, physiological data through integration with your wearable technologies. And then finally, the last data stream is actually the in-game data, so their performance data from whatever esport they play. And ultimately what we do is we put that through our GScience algorithm that we're currently building out, and then the output is actionable insights into their health, performance, wellness, injuries. And really what we're trying to help gamers really understand at this stage is just the self-awareness piece. It's making them more aware of, okay, yes, it's okay to grind today for 8 hours, but maybe the next day you need to come off, take the foot off the gas for 6 hours. And it's all about really making sure that they can perform at their best when it matters. So that's our first product. It's really targeted at the more top 50 global organizations and the 900 million competitive gamers out there who have the aspirations to go pro.
Okay, and they'd be playing in teams, Ryan, or would they be individuals?
Yeah, so I think once again it depends on the esport. So
I guess tell me a bit about the team structure, because that's something I'm not massively familiar with.
Yeah, no, sure. So it's not too dissimilar from traditional sports in terms of how you'd imagine a team like Man United being structured in terms of your coach, your manager, your owner, your players. The only difference in esports is that it's an organization, not a team. So there's an organization such as, let's say, Fnatic. So Fnatic are one of the biggest teams in Europe, but Fnatic themselves will have like maybe 10, 11 esports teams. So they could actually have between, on average, for these top organizations, between, let's say, 10 and 100 players on their roster, split across multiple different teams. So like I was mentioning earlier about your sports and esports, it's like Man United had a rugby team, football team, Gaelic team, whatever it may be. So organizations like that will have their League of Legends team, their CSGO team, their Call of Duty team. So that's kind of how it's structured.
I get it.
And then in and around that as well, then you'll have your support staff, your data analysts, your team managers, and now they're starting to bring in people like myself, like sports scientists, psychologists. So that's kind of why it's structured.
So once you're giving them that feedback, so you're collecting the data, giving them the feedback, then what are they doing about it? Or I guess what's the incentive to go out there? You're concerned about their health and wellness, health and performance. What are they and the teams doing about it?
So do you want the honest answer to this?
Yep.
A lot of gamers
Always.
don't give a shit about their health. Like in all honesty, they don't.
Yep.
They care more about in-game performance. It's all about, okay, how can I get better? So we've kind of learned this, and this has been our learnings over the last 2 years working in the industry. The way you got to kind of package it is like the Trojan horse, I call it. So we lead with, we're going to make you the best in-game performer that you can possibly be. But inside, it's, our pillars of physiology, nutrition, sleep, recovery, ergonomics, the environment. It's all of the pillars that we need to help build optimal performance. So it's all about framing. And the other biggest thing as well, Jay, is all about buy-in. Like in traditional sports, you need to get buy-in from a player, coach, organization, and it's no different in esports, but it's actually a wee bit more difficult sometimes. So you have to spend a lot of time building up a relationship with the players. You also need to really understand them as not just gamers, but as individuals, because a lot of the time our role is not necessarily about coaching them, but it's actually just being there as a support system for them and someone they can pick up the phone to after having a shit game, or if they're feeling really down and really low, and just kind of put the arm around the shoulder and say, right, let's get back up, let's get on the horse, and how can we support you to move forward? So that's kind of one side of it. I suppose in terms of organizations and teams, like this is the sad reality. There are some good teams out there. So Excel in UK are doing a phenomenal job. They brought in a guy, Fabian, who's an incredible sports scientist and performance psychologist, and he's built out an amazing framework there, and he has the buy-in of the players. And that's a really good example when an esports team adopts health and wellness and sports science and it goes well. The team is playing very well. The team are all healthy. It's a really well-structured, well-executed system, right? Now, there's a few other teams who are trailblazers in that scene. Astralis are one of the most successful CSGO teams. We're actually one of the early adopters, and they actually won 6 championships because they were bringing in the support staff. Complexity Gaming, who are owned by the Dallas Cowboys, have an incredible facility out there, and they're really leading the way when it comes to sports science. But they're the few, and unfortunately across the industry, teams and organizations, and I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but they care more about the bottom line than they do about their players. And that's the black and white of it.
Is there an incentive for these organizations to keep players in it for the longer term? Because you're saying that these players are burning out at 23, and they're probably only starting at, even if they start at 6, let's say 17, that's 6 years. It's not long. That's not a long life at the top playing a competitive, sport or game, whatever you want to call it. So I guess your big message is not only are you looking to improve, their health and performance and wellness whilst they're playing, but you must be looking to stretch that longevity as well.
Yes, certainly. And I think where we're at in the industry right now, it's all about education. I kind of say it's like, football 10 years ago or even 15 years ago when you were starting to introduce some of the data analysis, sports science into it. And, people are still quite slow to change and slow to be open to it. But as I was saying before, the pro teams really do care more about the bottom line. They care about sponsorship, advertisement, and because a lot of these pro teams, by the way, have raised large amounts of money because there's been a whole hype around esports. They're under a lot of pressure from their stakeholders to be able to get an ROI. So,
but they must be under increasing pressure to be concerned about the wellness of their team, right?
Yes. Well, if you have players burning out or having to retire, or getting injured, it's not a nice kind of look or image for the brand. So there is that play. There is the CSR, kind of play that we try to lead with as well. When we're speaking to these teams, being like, what are you doing about the health and wellness of your performers? Because the way I kind of see it is, if they're going to take the money narrative, right? Well, put it this way: if you invest in your people and you invest in your team, they're going to feel better supported. They're going to have everything they need to make sure that they can perform at their best when it matters. Yep. If the team's performing well and they're happy, they're going to be more loyal to the brand. If they're performing well, they're going to be, doing far better in these tournaments, which is going to get more eyes on the brands, on the sponsors who sponsor your team. There's going to be a bigger ROI for all of the stakeholders involved. So, without the esports athletes, there is no esports. That's the thing that I always try to stress. Like, they are a critical part of this infrastructure and ecosystem, but yet, so many teams still don't prioritize their health and wellness, and it's insane. But I do honestly think, Jay, like, my thought is that it is changing. There is more and more pressure from outside media. There's more and more pressure internally from the players as well, saying, look, we need this support. And that's why we're very confident that with the systems that we're building, with the coaching that we're providing, that we can genuinely have a real difference on, these individuals.
So teams and organizations wouldn't have a dietitian, they wouldn't have an S&C coach. Well, they wouldn't have them currently, or maybe some of the bigger ones would, but
some of the bigger ones would. Yeah, some of the bigger ones would. But once again, it comes down to budget. For a lot of the semi-pro teams or smaller teams, they wouldn't be able to afford that. But, my advice for them is kind of reach out to students who want to get into the scene, because see the amount of traditional sports people have reached out to GScience in the last, the last year. It's been insane. And I think for anyone who's actually listening to this now, who may be actually interested in working in esports, my biggest advice to you is go reach out to like an amateur semi-pro team and just ask if you can learn. Just go in and say, look, I've got this background, these skills. I'd love to learn about esports. I'd love to help. And you'd be amazed how much you can actually help these individuals, but also how much you can learn about the industry as well. But yeah, sorry, Jay, just going back to your question there. A lot of the top teams do have the support in place. But one of the things they still don't have is what we're building, which is the athlete monitoring system. It's great if you have practitioners in place who can give you support. But unfortunately, the current protocol is, let's wait until they're broken and try to fix them. So it's a reactive rather than proactive approach.
Which is how football used to be, right? Wait until someone was towards the end of the career, knackered, full of kind of pain-killing injections, and then think, right, 32 years old, maybe there's something we should try and do, and it's too late.
Exactly. So what we're trying to say is, like, look, let's take a longitudinal approach here. Let's do research into esports performance and health. Let's, collect all these different, metrics on an esports individual, understand their demands, understand their external, internal load markers, and be able to say, look, let's take action now and prevent someone burning out or prevent someone getting injured, rather than waiting until they get injured and then trying to fix them like that. So what we're basically trying to say is, like, through data, it gives you more knowledge, so you can make better informed decisions about being proactive to taking care of the athletes and optimizing their performance.
What makes a good gamer? And do you need to start like my son when you're 6 years old? For instance, I'm 45. My cognition is, I work hard on my cognition. I think my cognition and mental performance now is as important, or if not more so, than my physical. What makes a good gamer?
Well, I think, look, in terms of cognitively, of course you need to have the cognitive abilities for a start. You need to have the fast reaction times. You need to have a high level of executive functioning. I think they're all kind of a given. It's kind of like your physical attributes. If you're on a rugby field, you need to be a certain size. You need to be able to move fast. You need to be able to do certain things.
I was going to say, yeah, and a lot of that is, or some of that certainly is, inherited DNA. I'm not going to be able to go and play NBA. I'm 5'11". I'm just not going to be able to do it. Yeah. So is there, I guess, are there inherited, skills that, make you a really good gamer?
Yeah, I think there are. I mean, once again, depends on the type of esports that you're playing, because there's really cool things out there now. Like, one of our I suppose kind of competitors in the way would be Aim Lab, which is a company by Statespace, and they have like an amazing aim trainer that a lot of pros would use to warm up. And once again, it's improving all of the different cognitive markers that we just talked about, in terms of your reaction times and all these other metrics. So I think, fundamentally, yes, you do need to have the cognitive abilities and skill to be able to play at that level. But I think also, when you're looking at the team context, like, you need to be able to be coachable. You need to be able to take feedback. You need to be able to deal with the pressure. You need to have mental resilience there, because a lot of gaming and the culture is very toxic. You've probably heard about the toxicity, like people just, I don't know who's listening to this podcast. We're going to keep it quite PG here, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of,
you can be as open as you want.
Well, there's a lot of fucking shit that goes on. There's a lot of like shit talking. There's a lot of people like teabagging bodies in Call of Duty. There's people flaming each other and pinging each other in League of Legends. Like, gaming is full of toxic people. And even at the top level, like, if you watch some of the Call of Duty tournaments, which is my esports I love, like, you've got a 1v1 versus the guy, right? And say it's like worth, it's a big pressure moment. Like you shit on them and they're getting up in front of the stage and shouting over at each other. Like I love that kind of shit because it's part of the gamesmanship and sportsmanship and whole psychology behind it. But yeah, I think like it's like anything. Like if you were going to if you were a scientist and you're building the ultimate gamer, of course you need to have the cognitive skills. Of course you need to have that mental, resilience. You need to have openness to learn as well and be able to take feedback. But I think it all comes down to attitude as well. Like, look, to be successful at anything, you need to have the right attitude. You need to be disciplined. You need to be focused. You need to put in the hard work. So I think it's a combination of all the kind of things that you get in traditional sports, but kind of add that layer of the cognitive elements that you really need to create the ultimate gamer.
How do you see, I guess, the more, moving away from esports, the more mass market, gaming consumer, if we're to believe that social media is, leading a decline in mental health and an increase in anxiety and a desire for recognition and all these bad things that we associate social media with, how do we affect young gamers? If gamers are starting at 6 years old and there's amount of toxicity out there, how does the industry combat that?
Look, that's a really good question. And to be totally honest with you, like, it's not a simple answer, nor do I know the answer. And all I would say is, like, I voiced my concerns. I think I've told you this before, Jay. Like, I deleted my social media. I deleted my Facebook and Instagram two years ago. Like, I don't actively use them platforms. I think social media has been great for so many reasons to keep people connected. It's great to build a business if as an entrepreneur today, but there is that kind of fine tipping point when it starts to really consume your life and you spend more time in the digital world than you do in the real world. My fear is that these younger kind of kids are growing up in a world where all they've known is technology. And we actually don't know the impact that has had on their brain in terms of their development.
No, not a clue.
And that's what worries me, because, like, as much as I'm really up for Ready Player One and the Oasis and having your digital self and real self, I also do feel like, once again, it comes back down to people need to be made more self-aware about how social media apps are designed, how games are designed to trick you and go into your heuristics to basically get you into that game, into that world, as much time and attention into these digital environments. I think we need to really provide education for kids, for adults, for everyone, just to say, look, this is how it's designed, this is how it works. Here's your mechanisms to be able to control that. And, here's some other resources to be able to help you become more self-aware about, how you interact with all these different forms of, social media and gaming. So yeah, what I say is, it's not a simple answer, but I think it starts with education and helping people become more self-aware about their relationship with these different forms of technology.
I mean, it has to be with gaming, because it's not going away. There's no future in holding your hands up and saying, well, it's not my problem. I don't understand it. Maybe eventually it will go away. Gaming's not going away. Social media is not going away. Listen, regulation might come in, but still, there's a massive amount of money involved. So it's not going to be so purely to the consumer or the community's benefit. It's just interesting how, as gaming grows, and you're mentioning these, kids at 23 getting burnt out and retiring from mental stress. It feels like the industry has got a real responsibility there to kind of focus on, listen, they built this massive industry and there's this huge appeal amongst the younger generation, but there's also this massive responsibility to make sure they can continue to function mentally well.
I think it's hard though, Jay, as well. Like, I'll be honest with you, because, like, when you're 16 years old, do you think you really give a shit about your health and wellness?
Well, I guess I did, right? But I grew up in a different generation. I played sport. I didn't do any. There was no gaming around, and if there was, it was real infancy, type stuff that I paid no attention. But I was kind of brought up. Again, it's a different age. I was brought up, from 4 or 5. I was out every night playing football, cricket, fighting, whatever it was, with with a community of of kids all the same age or a little bit older, so you learn all these skills that a young kid today is probably not learning. So, and that's too easy for adults to say, well, I don't relate to it. And that's not an excuse. You can't use that as an excuse to not try and make a change, because you need to understand what's going on. I want to understand why my 6-year-old is fascinated watching a kid play, I don't know, is it Minecraft or whatever, but he's watching a kid play a game and the kid's screaming and shouting, and my little 6-year-old is loving it. So I need to understand that, and I think most parents want to, because they're progressive and they want to understand, how to make sure that their children stay well.
Yeah. Well, I think the point I was making there is, right, for a lot of gamers, all they want to do is game. They don't want to hear about it. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, look, I'm a bit like you, Jay. Like, I was very lucky. Like, I was brought up in the best of both worlds, I kind of call it, because, I've been a sport fanatic all my life. Like, I played rugby, Gaelic, football, boxing, all the different kind of stuff you would have done as a kid, right? I was outdoors running about my mates. But the thing is, when I came back and took off my boots, I'd put on the headset and I'd be in the digital world. So you know what I mean? Like, that was kind of my thing. Like, for so long, not many people knew I was a proper hardcore gamer. Like, I used to grind Call of Duty when I was younger. Like, I used to be really bloody good at it.
And did you play overnight as well?
Oh yeah, no, like multiple times I'd be playing in like competitions with people in America and stuff. So I'd be playing like 3, 4 a.m. My dad, a few times today, to be honest, like took my Xbox and was like, "I'm gonna throw it out the window." He was like, what the fuck are you doing at 3 a.m. in the morning playing? So like I've been there myself. Like, so that's what I'm trying to say. Like I think I'm quite uniquely positioned, because obviously I have my sports science background and knowledge of traditional sports and health and all the other stuff I do around mental health and anxiety and all the crazy shit that I do in that area. But also, like, I still play video games now, not as much as I used to, but I still understand the culture. I understand gamers. I understand how to think. And that's why for us, it's like, look, it's honestly all starts with self-awareness. You need to get them to realize how unhealthy the relationship is that they have with gaming for some of these individuals. But a lot of people don't want to hear it. And it's only when it's too late, when they're like seriously like anxious, burnt out, depressed, injured, whatever, when they go, oh shit, maybe I need to make a change. So really what our mission at GScience really is, it's really all about, going back to what you said at the start, we're trying to help empower gamers master their health. And it just starts with that self-awareness, the education, the support, the resources, the community as well to help them, and that's one of the things we have. We have a Discord community, got about 225 people in it now, but it's something that we're really trying to foster, is like giving people the opportunity to come in and learn about the benefits of health and wellness, not only in how it impacts your gaming performance, but also how it just leads to like living a healthier, happier life. So that's one of the areas that we really focus on. Then another thing I want to go back and talk about is what you just said about parents, right? Parents, the amount of conversations we've had with parents about their concern for their children and not having a Scooby-Doo about the esports world, it's amazing. And as you quite rightly said, right, you've got your generation and you've got this generation, and it really is a totally different generation when it comes to this online world.
Completely.
What I think is the best way for a parent to approach it is, try to sit down and understand it. You know what I mean? Like, join communities like ours, where we've got people like myself telling parents about, what it actually is, what is gaming and esports, what are the opportunities and serious career paths, how do you best support your kid if it's something that they're genuinely, they care about. And I think, you just have to go and be open-minded. You have to understand that this is a new world. It's a scary world as well, because, you've got all these online influencers, Twitch streamers, YouTubers, they're doing crazy shit a lot of the time. And, the young kids lap it up, and these are their idols. So I also think it's like, when you're one of these individuals at the top, it's like with great power comes great responsibility. And you are a role model for a lot of these young kids. So one of our strategies as well, Jay, is to get these top esports athletes and some of our influencers to really act as role models, to try to say, look, it's great living this lifestyle and it's great, playing games and all this here, but you also do have a responsibility to take care of your health. And that's the message that we're trying to promote in the industry. And we're trying to really change gamers' mindsets about their approach to health and wellness.
If you can do that and you're successful, do you think in 20, 30, 40 years time, do you think the average age of a competitive esporter will be older? So do you think the consumer will move with understanding of the category? So will teams be full of 35-year-olds as opposed to being full of 21-year-olds? Will they grow with the category if they're better looked after?
Probably not.
or will it always be a young person's gig?
I think there's, once again, it depends on the esport, right? Like we spoke to one of the leading Chinese teams. I'll not mention who they are, but their team manager basically said to me, look, we have so many players coming through that we push them so hard for 3 years to try to win a world championship, and then we just get the next best one in because they have such a big talent pool. And what I believe, it's kind of like, the pyramid of performance and participation and numbers. Yeah. Like, there's so many people now who want to take video games as their career. So as the competition gets tighter and tighter, and this is what I was talking about, the health crisis, everyone wants a competitive edge. If you see Cristiano Ronaldo or, whoever it is at the top doing a certain training methodology, if you're a young, impressionable kid who wants to get there, you're probably going to follow what he's doing. And the issue at the minute is that these top gamers, pro gamers, are doing the 8 to 12 hours of training. They're setting this example, and all the young gamers are like, shit, I need to be doing 12 hours a day if I want to get pro. And this is why it's a self-perpetuating cycle of all these health issues. And that's why we need to break it from the top, using our influencers and using the pro teams. And like I said, teams like Excel are doing a phenomenal job at promoting this message, but we need an industry shift and make them understand that it's not healthy to do what people have done for so many years. But what I think is going to happen is people like myself are going to continue to love esports for our whole lives. Just the way, for example, I don't know, Jay, who your football team is or whoever you support, but you probably support it because your dad supported it.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And it's probably going to be generational. It's like me with Man United. Like, my name's Ryan after Ryan Giggs. My dad was a mad Giggsy fan. And I think it's going to be the exact same. And I think, the likes of Excel, the likes of Guild Esports in the UK and what they're trying to do with David Beckham, I think it's going to be a generational thing where you pick a team and you support them fanatically until you get older. But I think the players themselves will still be quite young because of the demands of playing esports.
And do you think that's the peak as well? So, if you talk about a footballer reaching a peak at maybe 30, right? It's probably 30 now. It might be younger.
Yeah.
I guess there's because cognitive development continues long past 21, I would think. Mm-hmm. It probably gets to its, almost near its crescendo probably at 21, right? But you're certainly learning and able to learn and absorb information long past that.
Look, I'm no expert in this, so I don't want to touch on it too much, to be honest. What I would say, though, is it's not just about the cognitive skills. Like in a Call of Duty game, for example, what I like to say is, you've got veterans in the scene like Clayster, Crimsix, right? They don't have these crazy flick reaction skills anymore, but what they have is knowledge and experience. So they know how to play the map properly. They know the game. They know the spawns. They know strategy. So there's always obviously trade-offs as your physical performance and cognitive performance declines. If you're experienced enough, you can still compete at the high level of these young guns.
Yeah, it's interesting as sort of as we enter, I guess, the age of wellness and nutrition becomes more a part of everyday life, both mental and performance, and good kind of nutrient dense food grows into mass population. Understanding that eating well, good clean food is so important to to mental and physical performance, but also emotional balance, right, as well. So, and you mentioned about some of the top teams might have dietitians, but are you giving these guys any nutrition advice on, there's a certain amount of carbs you need to be eating, a certain amount of protein, fiber, fats to keep your blood sugar balance, so you don't get these crazy insulin spikes? Because, type 2 diabetes in a young person that, is massively concerning, and it's solely attributed largely to dietary control or lack of control. When you're drinking sugary drinks all day, and then you need another sugary drink, and you're not eating great food, you're not getting fiber, protein, fats in there, nutrient dense vegetables and fruit. I guess there must be, and again, it's education, and I get it. They don't want to understand that, but are you guys trying to bring that into your health and performance library, I guess?
Yeah, so I think just on that point, esports science is still so young. And one of the things that we're actually going to be doing with Loughborough University is doing a research project into a lot of the factors we talked about earlier, and really trying to understand, the performance requirements of being an elite esports player. There isn't a tried and tested proven methodology for building are training esports athletes indoors. They're for a nutritional protocol. Like all of these things are up in the air.
Yep.
That's why it's so friggin' exciting right now as a sports scientist coming in, because it's like learning a new field, taking all the stuff you think you knew in like traditional sports and trying to figure it out in esports.
Yeah.
But what we do is, we have our team of practitioners. Like I think I mentioned Jason Cowman, who's the head of athletic development at Irish Rugby. We've Kate O'Keefe, who's got a PhD in psychophysiology, and she's an expert in mental fatigue and cognitive load. We have Tristan Kennedy, who's Conor McGregor sports nutritionalist, and then Jamie Kiff, who is obviously my co-founder, another fellow sports scientist. So we have quite a well-rounded team there. But I personally wouldn't talk upon the nutritional side, Jay, because it's not my area of expertise. But yeah, what we try to do is when we actually work with a team, our methodology is that we do a performance audit, we call it. So we would speak with an individual, and we go through all the different pillars of performance that I talked about earlier, and we would rank them and score them. And we kind of split it up into 3 areas. So we have mind, body, craft are our 3 for esports. And we would rank them and say, right, you're here, and this is how we're going to help you get to that elite level, because they're naturally competitive. So when you tap into that, they're like, I'm only here, my mate's the here, I want to get up to there. So yeah, but I think on the nutrition side, like touch on it very quickly, I think there's a massive issue with mood and energy maintenance throughout the day, especially during scrims. You literally touched on it there. If you're eating high GI foods, like you're getting spikes in insulin, you're getting up and down spikes in your energy levels, your concentration levels as well are fluctuating. So I think as a man who has an experience in supplements, I think the industry is there to be disrupted. I think if someone came in there with a really good evidence-backed product and got their marketing right, with the right go-to-market strategy, with the right partners, I think they would do very well. So yeah, anyone listening, there's a big opportunity there. Go for
it. So what do you see the future of GScience, Ryan? What's your, where do you want the business to be alongside the industry? What's, where do you think it will be in 5-10 years, and where do you want your guys to be?
It's a good question. Look, I genuinely started this company with the goal of trying to help improve gamers' mental health. That was actually the starting point. For me and for the team, our grand vision is to have GScience as your virtual esports performance coach in your pocket. We want to give you the access to all the tools, materials, data that you need to live your best healthy life. That's essentially what we want. So we're really targeting the 2.7 billion gamers out there. That's our grand vision. And then once we've kind of nailed the esports and then gaming industry, we want to take all the best practice that we've learned around behavioral change, around motivation, around cognitive performance, and we want to apply it to other industries that we feel can be disrupted as well. So yeah, gaming and esports is just a starting point for us, but as you quite rightly know, Jay, you need to walk before you run. But I think there's a huge opportunity there. And I think with the industry as well, look, as much as I'm a traditional sports fan and I'm fanatical about my sports, esports is the future. It's a low barrier to entry. Doesn't matter if you're able, disabled, doesn't matter what your background is. There's no politics there. All you need to do is that you buy an Xbox, buy a PC, and you're online, you're in the digital world. So no wonder you have such huge numbers of mass participation. The way I kind of see it is that gaming and esports is going to be, it's going to be accessible on all platforms. Mobile esports is actually rapidly growing, but I think also PC as well, console. I see VR and AR getting huge developments and that becoming a really kind of developing industry there as well. And I don't see it slowing down. I think this is the future. I think, anyone who's in traditional sports now, I'd be keeping your eye on esports, because that's where I think a lot of the big opportunities are going to come for the next 5 to 10 years.
So the generation now, who are my son's age, my daughter's age, the future of performance is cognitive.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Well, we'll see how it pans out. That's been a really interesting insight into gaming, into esports, into your business, and into a lot of the behavioral challenges that go along with, I guess, making it a more, an easier pastime to increase the longevity of. So, Ryan, thanks for that. I've had a fantastic 45 minutes there. Hope you're well.
Cheers.
Anything you want to add? Anything you want to tell the viewers before we go?
Yeah, no, look, I think anyone who's listening, if you're interested in learning more about kind of GScience or just esports performance as a whole, like please feel free to reach out. My email is ryan@gscience.io. Our Twitter is gscience.io. So yeah, feel free to reach out. And if you would like to be part of the gaming community, we've got a Discord as well. So I can share that with Jay. But yeah, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it, Jay. And happy to come back and chat about it in a couple of years' time when the industry's moved on.
Absolutely. Take care. Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers. Thank you.